The results of this comparison are that the Millennium Falcon and the Tantive are... Hey guys, this is JP's LEGO Reviews. Today, I'm going to be comparing the LEGO Star Wars Tantive 4 set with set number 75244 to the LEGO Star Wars Millennium Falcon from Force Awakens set number 75105. Now, today I'm going to be comparing the displayability, realism, the value proposition, building experience, the playability, and the minifigure selection of these two sets. So, let's break it down. Now, when it comes to the displayability of these two sets, it's quite difficult because they are both quite displayable LEGO sets. But overall, the winner here is the Tantive 4. The reason why is because as just a color combination, the Millennium Falcon looks a bit scrappy and it looks odd. Now, it is supposed to look like half of it came from a junkyard, but the thing is, that look hasn't really been executed well, and it looks too messy to actually be considered a sort of good-looking kind of scrappy vehicle. It just looks bad. Meanwhile, the Tantive 4 has a much cleaner look, which makes it better to display. But now, let's move on to the realism factor of these two sets. Now, when it comes to the realism factor of these two LEGO sets, which set is more realistic? Well, it's pretty hard to say which one looks more realistic, but I'll actually give it slightly to the Millennium Falcon, simply because it has a lot more detail and there's a lot more little intricate parts that show the realism factor of a Millennium Falcon. Meanwhile, because of the scale of a Tantive 4, but also because of the sticker usage as well, it does make it look not as realistic as the Tantive 4 in universe. Meanwhile, the Millennium Falcon does look very realistic indeed. But now, let's move on to the value proposition of these two sets. Now, when it comes to the value proposition of these two sets, which one is the better value? Well, the Tantive 4 released for 330 Australian dollars, or I believe 200 US dollars. Meanwhile, the Millennium Falcon released for 250 Australian dollars, or I believe 170 US dollars. But which LEGO set here is a better value? Well, the Tantive 4 is bigger, but it's also $70 more. But the value, the set with a better value, I will say, is it's actually equal. The reason why is the Tantive 4 does feel like it's $70 more in value than the Millennium Falcon, considering the fact that it's a lot longer, it's a bigger set, it's a more luxurious building experience compared to the Millennium Falcon, because this is kind of a UCS set with the Tantive 4, but the Millennium Falcon is just a play set. And with all these things combined, the value proposition here is equal. But now, let's move on to the building experience of these two sets. Now, when it comes to the building experience, which LEGO set actually has the better building experience? Well, you get simply more to build with the Tantive 4 rather than the Millennium Falcon, but in general, I think the building experience is roughly the same. There's no real differentiating factor that makes one better than the other. Yes, the Tantive 4 has more pieces, but it's not a more interesting build. It's not necessarily more enjoyable than the Millennium Falcon. They're both pretty equal in that aspect, and they both are great sets to build as well. But now, let's move on to the playability of these two sets. Now, when it comes to the playability of these two LEGO sets, it's again quite a difficult thing to measure, simply because they are both actually designed to be played with. Now, the interior space of the Millennium Falcon is fantastic, but it's harder to carry and it's not super fun swooshing it around. Meanwhile, the Tantive 4, on the other hand, even though it has way less interior space, it's a very swooshable LEGO set with a lot going on. But the set with the better play features here, and this is a very slight win, is the Millennium Falcon. The interior space, firstly, is a big plus, but what makes the Tantive 4 slightly lose its edge is because of the size of it. It's actually quite hard to actually play with the outside features as well. So the only advantage that the Tantive 4 has is the swooshability and the things that you can do with it on the outside. But the Millennium Falcon and the Tantive 4 both are pretty inaccessible with one hand, and that makes the Millennium Falcon a better set because you can do a lot more inside, and they're both relatively the same-ish outside. But now, let's move on to the minifigure selection of these sets. Now, out of these two LEGO sets, which minifigure selection is better? Well, on the left, you have the Tantive 4 minifigure selection. On the right, you have the one for the Millennium Falcon. But which set has a better minifigure selection overall? Well, again, it's very close, but I have to say the one with a better minifigure selection is the Tantive 4, simply because the minifigures are more interesting. You have Princess Leia, you have Bail Organa, 2 Rebel Troopers, C-3PO, and R2-D2. Meanwhile, you technically do get an extra minifigure with The Force Awakens, but apart from Finn and the old Han Solo, the rest of these minifigures are pretty forgettable, and the 2 Bandit guys aren't that interesting as well. But now, let's move on to my final thoughts on this comparison. Now, what are my final thoughts when it comes to this comparison? Well, it's actually quite difficult because the Tantive 4 set actually won 2 categories, and so did the Millennium Falcon. Well, the minifigure selection and the playability were quite close, so they're half points. Meanwhile, the realism and displayability were quite more decisive, which is 1 point each. So, the results of this comparison are that the Millennium Falcon and the Tantive are equal. There isn't a significantly better set here, and that's really difficult because it just comes down to personal preference. The value, the building experience, how well it looks, the playability, and the minifigures, comparing apples to apples, they're pretty similar. Now, you do get more with the Tantive, but you also pay more. And overall, when it comes to this comparison, here is my advice. What set do you like more? Do you like just subjectively, not objectively, the Tantive 4 or the Millennium Falcon? Because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to subjectivity rather than just a set which obviously is better than the other. And yeah, those are my thoughts on this comparison. And if you were to get one, I just have to say, what set do you like more personally? Because there's nothing objective that you can find here to make one or the other a better set in this comparison. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button. If you want to see more content just like this, please smash the subscribe button. Hope you get decisive today and keep building.